What would happen if you never stopped farting? Check it out in this video. 5 minutes before, you eat a bad taco. You're having lunch at Taco Bell, but your bean burrito tastes kind of strange. 1 minute before, stomach rumbling. Your stomach starts making aggressive noises. Oh no. It all begins. You let out a huge fart. The loudest fart ever recorded was 194 decibels, louder than a gunshot. 30 seconds later, people start to stare. People begin to stare, unable to believe what just happened. 1 minute later, the smell hits and everyone runs. Then, the smell hits. Oh God! Grown men begin to weep and run for the exit. 2 minutes later, the fart just won't stop. Your face turns red with embarrassment as people edge away from you. 3 minutes later, you break the world fart record. The world's longest fart lasted 2 minutes and 48 seconds by Bernard Clemens. 7 minutes later, but you don't even need to poop. Rushing to the deserted bathroom, you realize you don't even need to go number 2. 10 minutes later, you clench your butt cheeks with all your might. Okay, this isn't funny anymore. You clench your sphincter with all your might. 20 minutes later, your stomach starts to swell. Did you know holding in your farts for too long can make you burp instead? 25 minutes later, what is going on? You've never experienced this before, and you're extremely confused. 30 minutes later, you face your anxiety and run home. You decide to run home. The farts help propel you at incredible speed. 40 minutes later, people avoid you on the street. Mothers cover their children's noses to save them from your awful stench. 55 minutes later, it's becoming extremely painful. Holding in your farts is as painful as it is bad for you. It's always best to let it out. 1 hour later, you arrive home. As you arrive home, your house quickly fills with the awful smell. 2 hours later, you can no longer hold in the farts. You feel a sudden sense of despair wash over you. 3 hours later, you have an accident. Walls painted brown. Oh, so it wasn't just a fart. 5 hours later, extreme itching on your butt. The constant exposure to bacteria in your farts is making your skin extremely itchy. 10 hours later, forced to sleep with the window open. The smell of the farts is so bad, you sleep with the window open. 18 hours later, you wake up with extreme thirst. Over time, the continuous release of gas leads to dehydration. 20 hours later, you arrive at work. It's Monday morning, and it's time for work. How are you going to explain this? 21 hours later, you get fired from work. The farts are too distracting and you lose your job. Do you have rights? Who cares? 23 hours later, your friends make jokes. You sheepishly tell your friends about the Taco Bell burrito, but they just mock you. 1 Dalton Yee later, then they avoid you. Work and personal relationships are severed, and you feel ostracized. 3 days later, depression sets in. You slowly realize you're a weirdo, a boogeyman, a true social outcast. 4 days later, you go to the hospital. You decide to go to the hospital to try and find a cure for this terrible affliction. 5 days later, sorry, but there's no cure. Doctors say they've never seen this before and don't know how to cure it. 1 week later, but your digestive system is collapsing. Your insides are under constant stress from the diarrhea and farts. 2 weeks later, you can't even leave the house. Did you know social isolation is as bad for you as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day? 2.5 weeks later, you need to find a solution. You search the internet trying to find a cure. Whoa, these are some weird videos. 3 weeks later, you try to glue your butt shut. You decide to try some DIY surgery to see if you can stop the farts. 3.5 weeks later, the farts start to rot inside you. Like manure rotting on a hot summer's day, the sulfur compounds decompose. 1 month later, suddenly your butt explodes. The smell is something indescribable, like a million rotten egg omelets. 1.5 months later, now it's a constant leak of foul air. Your sphincter muscles have given up, lost all strength, and soon, so will you. 2 months later, the neighbors move out. Your neighbors can't stand the farts anymore and have decided to move away. 3.5 months later, your family disowns you. Your family no longer wants to talk to you because of the farts. 4 months later, only beans left in the house. There's no one left to buy real food. This isn't good. 5 months later, the machine gun farts begin. The police are called to investigate reports of a machine gun, but the reality is much worse. 6 months later, you have scars on your butt. The constant farts have ripped chunks out of your skin. Infections start to appear. 8 months later, sneezing blood. You're now sneezing blood everywhere. 10 months later, news crews film a documentary. Gas masks are handed out as a precaution. 11 months later, the TV presenter starts to choke. It's a chaotic scene. People are vomiting inside their masks and suffocating. 1 year later, birds fall dead from the sky. Your farts are even killing the animals. What a monster! 3 years later, no one is left in the town. Everyone has left your hometown due to the awful smell of the farts. 5 years later, you start selling gas for biofuel. You've found a way to make money, and you're making a lot of money. 8 years later, fart-powered cars become popular. Your farts have led to a sustainable source of fuel for cars. You're a legend. 10 years later, alarming methane release. But you're now releasing more methane than all the cows in the world. 12 years later, climate change speeds up. Your farts are now the leading cause of climate change. 14 years later, protesters at your house. Protesters throw eggs at your house. Not sure why, it already smells like eggs. 15 years later, you get assassinated. Your assassination by a radical environmental group sparks international remembrance. What's the most embarrassing situation you've ever farted in? Comment below.